You are listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second half of the Only Wrestling Talk Show here on 90.3 WHPC and now on YouTube.com as well. Welcome back to Takedown Breakdown. I'm your host, Josh Soberg. Solo this evening. That's okay. Lyle Gillen, Justin Carasiola will be back with me next week. So, the first half we discussed which show has been better the last few weeks, AEW or NXT. And now this week this time we're going to discuss something that I'm hoping people have watched so far and have taken notice of because it's been phenomenal. And that is the show Dark Side of the Ring. It has been an amazing season so far. It started with the Chris Benoit episode, and we've gone to the New Jack episode, how New Jack was, and the craziness with him, and of course the Jimmy Snuka story with the murder of his girlfriend, and you know this past week we had the intense story of something that had not been spoken about in forever, and that was the story of Dino Bravo. Rick Martel was asked to be in the documentary. He chose not to. It was too difficult for him. But I'll go in order about what I thought of each episode and why it's such a great series. First off, it's an excellent series because it's not just about wrestling; it's about people's personal lives. So the New Jack one is interesting. He started. I'm gonna look it up quick. Let me see. Hold on. I think it was. I know it was in Jim Cornette's promotion. Um, I'm going to get to it quick. He was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was ran by Jim Cornette. He was with he did a he was in a charity with Mustafa Saeed, and they were formed and known as the Gangsters. So pretty much what Jim Cornette wanted the Gangsters to do, specifically New Jack to do, was to be the most hated guy on the planet and not care what anybody thought. And my goodness, did he accomplish that in a big way. He got such a reaction, but it's just so crazy when you hear the stories about how it was, New Jack was, and then, him and Jim Cornette kind of had a falling out a little bit. Because Jim felt betrayed by him when he left and he went to ECW at Paul Heyman offered the Gangsters a contract. And boy, that's where everything went off for New Jack and Mustafa Saeed. He was a very violent wrestler in the ring. There's definitely more violent. When you think of like Abdul the Butcher, you think violent. No, this guy was right up there as well. And the crazy things that he did, um, and his upbringing was really rough, and it was, and I don't think that helped. But boy, he brought out a mean streak in him when he was in Extreme Championship Wrestling, like nothing else. I mean, he would use weapons out of this world. You know what I mean? He would always if you look, um, if you see the documentary and you look at how his forehead looks, it's all cut up and stashed up. And, guys that I think of when I see cut up, stashed up, scabbed up heads like that are Devon Dudley, Abdul the Butcher, and Dusty Rhodes. And even Bruiser Brody, if you see the videos when he got older. Those guys used to get stabbed in the head like crazy. They would be called, color. You want color, which is blood. You would do it. And of course, speaking of color, they touched on a few incidents that happened in his career. One of them being the mass transit situation. Now, I want to make sure I get this. So in 1996, in Revere, Massachusetts, the Gangsters were scheduled to face Devon Dudley and Axel Ron. Ron never was able to make the show. So Eric Kulas was an untrained 17-year-old who convinced Booker Paul Heyman that he was 23 and had been trained by the veteran Killer Kowalski. Kulas requested that New Jack blade him during the match, but the incision was made incorrectly, causing excessive bleeding and for Eric Kulas to be hospitalized. Um, New Jack was charged with aggressive assault after that incident happened. Um, and he did not win the case, you know. Um, didn't happen because of the contract, and Kulas lied to Heyman and everything like that, and the case was thrown out. Um, so nothing was ever made of it. He had the incident as well. I'm trying to see. He had a couple of ones. He was in the independent scene. Let's see. He fought. Oh man. Let's see. He had a scaffold. He had a scaffold. He had a scaffold match where he used a taser on an opponent, and he threw him off the tables. Well, he threw him off the scaffold, and he landed on a bunch of tables. And the video is definitely on YouTube if you haven't seen before. It's crazy. It's madness. And then there was another one where he faced this guy, Gypsy Joe, and you know he was like the 70 something, 71-year-old man, and he got crazy and he started attacking Joe with a chain. And you know what I mean? And it was just so wild. You know what I mean? And then the craziest one of it all, let's see. He was scheduled to face Jason Lane in a match in Jacksonville, Florida. Um, During the match, Lane drew that surprise began punching him in the face. New Jack then pulled a metal blade from the camouflage wrestling attire and stabbed him in the head. He was arrested. And this it gets crazy. I'm only laughing because it's just crazy. Um, you know, he was put in jail, and Lane told Jack, "We have to continue this feud." Jack said, "I'll continue the feud if you drop the charges." He dropped the charges, and Jack left Florida. And that was the end of it. Crazy. So he got out of that. I mean, the whole documentary, violence and craziness and nastiness, and it's just his life in professional wrestling. He made it back to Impact for a couple times. But it's just what I mean. It's just wild. Um, I don't know. I think he is still indie wrestling, but it's just like you know what I mean. It's um the whole feature to me was one of the wildest ones I'd ever seen. Um, because of just everything that involved New Jack, and it was just wild and crazy to see it and to see everything be done. Like I knew it was going to be weird and it was going to be violent, but that took it to a whole another level of violence. So I mean, it's definitely if you remember New Jack from ECW and everything like that, that's definitely something you want to check out for sure. Um, the next week they had the Jimmy Snuka one. And it was a weird one because, I wrote on Twitter, it's amazing. You don't really know. I think I wrote, you don't know who your heroes really are. And I was frightened to watch this one because I knew of Jimmy Snuka through my parents because my mom was a Jimmy Snuka fan and they used to go see him at the shows when, he was in a feud with Don Morocco and everything like that. And it was wild to just see all of this stuff. And then, of course, he passed away during the trial again. And it was just like, I mean, just the whole story and the backstory behind the whole thing was just crazy. Her sisters really tried to get her. I don't remember the woman's name, but tried to get her out of um the situation. I want to look it up actually. Um, I want to see, because they tried to get her. Nancy um Argentino was her name. So um, so it's just whole thing was just wild. Like you see when they're eating dinner one night, Nancy, Jimmy, and one of her sisters, and he pretends to put his hands around her neck after he asks like, "How's it going?" And I'm just like, that's messed up. Now I know he was arrested a couple of times, Jimmy Snuka. And there was with drug issues and everything like that. But I mean, whew, I mean that was an intense one. You knew it was going to happen. Um, you know the just the whole backstory. And then when he came back to wrestle, some fans knew what was going on. They were chanting about, like they were saying, "You murdered your girlfriend." They were yelling at him and everything like that. And it was just so wild that there was always an issue with Jimmy, and she had to follow him. She followed him on the road, Nancy, just to get him going, get him to the shows on time and everything like that. I mean, he needed help, and like I said, we always don't know our heroes behind the scenes, but boy, when you see something like this, it's like, and it just blew my mind when you saw the stories behind it. Have Nancy's family talk about it was a crazy thing. It's even like goes back to the Chris Benoit thing. It was like, it's like the families are talking about it, and it's just wild because this was something that was never been spoken about um, ever. So, to me, it's one that you want to go back, you want to check out, you want to see the whole story. You had wrestlers come in. Oh, there was one I missed in between, the Brawl for All. Um, the Brawl for All one was another one that was fascinating because of the whole backstory behind it. So the story behind the Brawl for All was um if you won, you got an opportunity to face Stone Cold and you get a big push. And Vince Russo made this also because he felt, you know, Bradshaw was the tough guy saying, I could beat up anybody, blah, 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 blah. And everything like that. And the tournament was made around Dr. Death Steve Williams. And then you're interviewing Jim Cornette, Bruce Pritchard, interviewing The Godfather, Bart Gunn, who won the whole thing. Um, I said Jim Cornette, I believe, Vince Russo. Everybody's being interviewed during this whole thing. And it's like, the wrong guy won the tournament, never gave him a push. And what does he get for winning the tournament? He gets a WrestleMania boxing match against Butterbean, and Butterbean laid out Bart Gunn, essentially ending his wrestling career. Because at that point, I mean, what's left? The whole tournament was a waste. People got seriously injured in this. It was one of the dumbest ideas on the planet. Concussions all around. Dr. Death Steve Williams, who was supposed to get this big push, was his push got shattered at that point. They had nothing for Bart Gunn because they didn't think Bart Gunn was going to win the whole brawl for all. And the idea was just a wretched idea by Vince Russo. And even Vince Russo, you look at it, he was watching some of the highlights of it. Um, and it was almost to the point, and he was also on like Busted Open, and he and Bully Ray got into it. Um, he and Bart Gunn got into it a little bit on the After Dark show, and it was a whole crazy episode because at first I wasn't really that into him, thinking, it's Brawl for who cares? Jim Ross talks about it in the episode, and it was just wow, a horrible idea. Guys getting seriously hurt, and nobody got anything out of it. Bart Gunn didn't get a thing. Nobody cared. And then, they went to have him go train to be a boxer and everything like that. And he was taking, he sat home for months. and didn't do anything because they had nothing planned for him after he won. So it was just a whole, just a really, 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 really bad idea. So if you want to check that out, it is literally one of the worst ideas in professional wrestling history. And of course, it was led by Vince Russo. So go figure. And again, you're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and on YouTube.com. This is Takedown Breakdown. I'm your host, Josh Silverberg. Um, Justin Cariciolo, Lyle Gillen will be back next week. But like I said, we're talking about the Dark Side of the Ring episodes that have happened the last couple of weeks, and then I'm going to get to my finisher at the end. So the last episode and the most recent one um, that I want to get to is the Dino Bravo one, and this one I was very much looking forward to. And the reason I was looking forward to it was due to the fact that I was kind of curious how everything unfolded. I've heard of the story, how, you know, he was he was a wrestler, blah, 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 blah. We knew all that. He was huge in Canada, did everything like that. But then all of a sudden, now it's like, um, all of a sudden, it's like, well, hold on a second now. You know, how how did it all really go down? How did it all really start? You know what I mean? Um, of course, after the Dina Bravo one, um, you got one, two, three, or you got the David Schultz story, that's I've heard around the world. Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Abrams story, Herb Abrams. You got a story about the Road Warriors. I'm sure a lot of it is going to be about Hawk. And then, of course, the last one, Owen Hart. That's going to be an intense one for sure. Kind of curious how they go about that one. But back to the Dino Bravo story. So, how the Dino Bravo story was unfolded was he was a huge idol in um, he was born in Italy, huge, in Quebec, Canada. People loved him. He ran his own business up until 1985. He was running a wrestling company. Let's see, Bravo had Jim Crockett, blah blah blah. He was doing a bunch of different promotions up in Canada, and the thing was, um, the interesting thing behind the whole thing was he was what I took from the episode was he was essentially Hulk Hogan in Canada. And they were actually supposed to have a match, he and Hulk Hogan. And the WWE at the time got scared that it was going to be over more than Hulk Hogan would be. So they scrapped the match completely in Quebec. But um, it was kind of crazy how that whole story was. He was wrestling his whole career, unbelievable big idol in Canada, and he goes to the WWF, and it wasn't all in for it at first, but he went. Money was there and everything like that, and his friends were there, like Rick Martel and all these guys, and you know Jacques Rougeau was in the documentary. You know, and the crazy thing, they dye his hair like blonde and they change him up and everything like that. And it's just a different dynamic from what he's used to when he's getting booed. And, you know, sometimes people didn't understand him with the accent, with like kind of with it was, the accent that he had. So people were trying to get his character. And he was let go in, I believe, 1992 by the WWE. And once, you wrestle your whole life, um, and you're let go, it's like, what do you have left to turn to? It's tough, that's the problem. Um, and he had a huge house and he had a family and he had to support his family. So he got involved in the cigarette business and everything like that. And, getting involved with the wrong people. Two guys broke in, they didn't even break in. They just walked into his house and killed him. Mafia, it was like essentially they killed him in a mafia style way. I think it was multiple times. They left their weapons. If anybody's ever seen The Sopranos, they do that. They shoot multiple times. They drop their weapons, and then they go away. Um, so that was a crazy sequence and a crazy situation. It was one I was always curious about for years upon years. His widow's in it. His daughters, his wife is in it. His daughter's in it. He had a couple of partners that were in it. Jacques Rougeau was in it. Rick Martel was not in it. They had basically they had a clip of him talking about it. But boy, oh boy, was it just that was a really intense one, and it was a sad one because you see his daughter. They hadn't talked about it until now, and it's the crazy thing about these documentaries about Dark Side of the Ring is they get the most in depth thing possible, and it was just in a way intense, sad, and you obviously feel for Dino and everything that happened. He was just involved with the wrong people at the worst possible time. You know, so that was really the issue. Check that out for sure. I think they're all on YouTube. Um, it's an unbelievable series. Even the past ones you could watch about Gino Hernandez, the death of him. Um, you know, Bruiser Bodie, the killing in Puerto Rico. Oh man, I mean, Fabulous Moolah, her background, and the Von Erichs one is a very intense one. The Montreal Screwjob with Bret Hart. Uh, the Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth one. They went from having 6 episodes to now 16 this year, though. So that's you know, blessed to the makers over there of Dark Side of the Ring. Yeah, I actually was told about the series from two people. One was from my father; he told me about it. And the other was from Kevin Boston Hill, who you can also hear on WHBC's Sports Night. Um, former colleague, I mean, I know, former co-host of mine on Sports Night. He was telling me about the show too, and I was just like, I gotta check this out. Everybody's telling me about it. It's crazy, and it's a very interesting show, and it's really intense. A lot of the episodes are something else. So, if you haven't seen it yet, you gotta check them out. They're phenomenal. They're well done, well written. It's not just wrestling; it's personal lives, and it's tragedies and just different things that happen in the business and outside the business. So, okay, we have a couple minutes left. Um, I'm gonna get to my finisher now because first off, shame on me that I did not mention this last week. Really big shame on me. Um, my condolences go out to Howard Finkel, his family, friends, everybody, because Howard passed away last week. He is the greatest ring announcer, not just in a WWE, but of all time. WrestleMania 1, his voice is iconic. The welcome to WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like that's just an iconic voice that is something that will never be portrayed ever again. And this is my finisher in the sense that I can't believe I did not mention it. None of us mentioned it. So that's a shame on us. Um no, when I think of Howard Finkel, I think of all the great WrestleMania matches and the moments because he did all the announcing. Um and it's just it was a I know he hadn't been well for a while. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one that I think you look back on the greatest at his job. Like Mean Gene was the best interviewer. Howard Finkel was the best in-ring announcer. You know, he was the guy, the iconic voice, the moments. You always saw that he was around during that time, for sure. So again, I wanted to send out thoughts and prayers to him and his family. It's definitely a very sad thing to see an iconic figure like him in the business. Um, so rest in peace to him. And I'll do one more finisher because I do have some time left. My next finisher is I want to see how Double or Nothing is produced for AEW. I'm curious because I'm excited about it, and the reason being is they're still doing it on pay per view. So clearly, this is their big show of the year. Is Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing is their big moment. Like WWE has WrestleMania, New Japan has Wrestle Kingdom. This is AEW's big one, Double or Nothing. And this year it's the second year they're doing it. Last year was debuted at the MGM Grand. It was ginormous. It was huge. Debuted extremely well. Had great viewership. People were tuned in. I was. I watched it. I watched it the next day. I didn't see any of the results or anything like that. God bless me for not looking or checking. I wait to the next day to wait and watch. I forget what I was doing. It was somewhere. I can't remember. But point being, um, I am curious how they produce this because with the whole virus, um, they're getting the okay to go back to Florida and do the show again. So I'm kind of curious how that goes. The other thing I'm curious about is who's on the show and what are the rivalries? Because, like I said, Moxley doesn't really have. I mean, it's a few weeks away, so maybe they'll start a rivalry this week or next week. Um, Obviously, the TNT Championship will be there. I don't think the tag team champions can be defended unless obviously Hangman's there. Women's Championship, same thing with Nyla Rose not being there. It's like, I mean, obviously, Hikaru Shida is the next one in line. And that's going to be a great match. I actually like Hikaru Shida a lot. I think she's developed really well. So that's that. And the next thing I want to say is WWE doing Money in the Bank from the corporate headquarters. That's going to be interesting. They're going to have the Money in the Bank match at the top of the roof of WWE at the headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, and they start from the ground floor, and they have to fight their way. And I'm just thinking of that Super Bowl commercial from years ago when they were all fighting at the WWE headquarters office. Like I'm trying to figure out, like how is this going to work? How is this going to happen? And it's almost to the point of like, it's a lot of flights of stairs, is it not? So they have to fight and go upstairs. This is going to be, this is, when I said I wanted interesting, boy, are we getting interesting. Can I tell you right now? Because this is about as interesting as it gets, in my opinion. And I want to see how it's produced. Apparently, Vince is walking around saying he doesn't care. I mean, I feel like that's been going on for a while, but admit it now. Sure, why not? It's an easy way out. Um, you know, my thing is too. When you look at how this is going to be done, I think it could end up being worked really well. I really do. I'm excited to see this, and I want to know how it's done. I want to know, and I also want to know how they're going to get all the wrestlers there because it's not safe to travel right now. And I'm curious, are they going to do like only the two matches in Stanford and the rest at the Performance Center? It's kind of like weird now how they're going to go about this, but we'll see. All right, everybody, that's the end of our show for tonight. Definitely, again, check us out on youtube.com, Facebook, Twitter. Justin and I will be back next week. Thank you for tuning in to Takedown Breakdown. You're listening to 90.3 WHBC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Take care, stay safe, and again, thank you to all the healthcare workers and teachers and bus drivers and transportation people, everybody that's been on the front lines. You're doing a phenomenal job. Stay safe, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.